So today I thought I would do something a little bit different than I usually do and just go through a single relic and talk about the different ways that it can be used and how you can determine which champions it might be good on and that you can leverage it with. So in this case I wanted to talk about Searing Brilliance, which is my personal favorite relic in the game. I think there's a lot of different ways that it can be used and it can really change a lot of decks, and it's just the power of it is quite strong in general, and it can be easily overlooked. But the what it does, it gives you a power which at game start it grants a random spell from your deck an item that gives it -1 cost and draw 1, and then it also creates 4 additional copies of that spell in your deck. So this primarily, you might think, okay, this is going to be good for champions that just want to cast a ton of spells. If, they're a spellcaster damage champion, they're going to, be able to cast more of their spells, draw more spells, and they'll have more copies of their spells in their deck, which, yes, that is a good use case for it, but it has a lot of other use cases where especially so first thing you want to do with this is obviously you want to look at, okay, what spells do I have in my deck? And in this case, we have Ari here, but we can go look at other champions as well. So look at the starting deck and see, okay, how many spells do I have in my deck? I have Charm here, I have Spirit Dance, and I have Homecoming. So I have 3 spells in my deck. That means if I want to hit one specific spell, the chance that I hit that spell, like let's say I want to hit Charm, I have like a 1 in 3 chance of Searing Brilliance hitting that. Or if I want to hit Sprite Dance, I have a 1 in 3 chance of hitting that. If there's, 2 spells I want to hit, if, either Charm or Sprite Dance is great, but I don't want to hit Homecoming, then, I have a 2 in 3 chance. So looking at this, seeing what spells are in your deck that you would benefit from, and what would make you hit those spells. What are your chances of that? Eventually you can cut spells from your deck, so you'll be able to really benefit from that as well. I think that's a very important piece in terms of determining, okay, is this relic going to be worth it for me? And then can I build around those spells? Is there something where basically if any of those spells have like Grifter's deck in them, pretty much there's a couple champions. If I go into swap champions, like if I say Twisted Fate, I know one of his, I have it on him because in his deck he has Make It Rain. This has Grifter's deck, which shuffles additional copies of it back in. So if I hit this with Searing Brilliance, this Grifter's deck makes 1 cost copies of it. That means that it's going to effectively make free copies of it in my deck. There'll be 0 cost. It'll shuffle 2 copies in and I'll draw. So I'll basically be continually flooding my deck with this, and I'll be drawing into more copies of it. And eventually, once I've drawn enough cards, I will be able to go infinite with this. I will only be drawing more copies of this, doing damage to their entire board. Similar thing if I go to, swap champion. If I go to like Spirit Blossom Ari, you can see it. I have it on her as well. If we look at her starting deck, she has Final Blessing, which also has Grifter's deck. This already has draw on it, so it can sort of go infinite by itself without the Searing Brilliance, but Searing Brilliance will draw me 2 cards, so I'm more likely to draw into, or Searing Brilliance plus this draw, now I'm drawing 2 instead of 1, will make it more likely for me to draw into these ones, and it'll make them free, so, I can get those. I can get all my ephemeral allies, essentially to the point where I'm giving them plus infinite damage almost, I can just keep casting it until I decide my board is big enough that my ephemeral allies will just destroy my enemies. So There's quite a few champions that have Grifter's deck on some of their stuff. I think also like Janna. She also has Grifter's deck on one of her spells. So yeah, looking at the deck, if it has Grifters, that's definitely a good indication that this will be a good champion to use Searing Brilliance on. Another indication that a champion might be good to use Searing Brilliance on is if their champion spell, like in this case Ari, she has her Charm. If their champion spell is part of their deck, you can hit their champion spell with Searing Brilliance. This can potentially lead you to combos like Diana. We can pick out her. She has both her spell, which is Pale Cascade. This is in her starting deck, and she luckily only has 2 spells. So once you cut Heavens Aligned, as long as you don't draft any other spells, you're guaranteed to hit Pale Cascade, which is her champion spell. And then if you're using Echoing Spirit in combination with this, Echoing Spirit makes her champion spell cost 1 less, and then the Searing Brilliance will also make it cost 1 less. So you get a 0-cost version of her champion spell. This will draw you more cards. You'll shuffle copies of her back into your deck. You'll be able to give her +1/+1 and a rare item every single time you cast it. And you can just keep cycling in for more Dianas and using her champion spell to draw more Pale Cascades and whatnot, and beef her up. And you can pretty consistently one-turn kill with Diana using a build like this. Other champions that have a similar thing, you can look at Misfortune. So she also has her champion spell, which is Make It Rain. This is in her deck, so if you hit Make It Rain, she also has only 2 spells, so if you cut double up from your deck, you're guaranteed to hit Make It Rain. Again, you can see I have both Echoing Spirit and Searing Brilliance in order to leverage that, allow me to basically go infinite with Make It Rains and just drawing copies of Misfortune, and then raining down on my enemy as much as I want. There's quite a few champions that have their champion spell in their deck, even champions like Nasus. I'm not using Searing Brilliance on him, but you could certainly do this. He has 3 spells in his starting deck. He has Exhaust, Siphoning Strike, and Weight of Judgment. But Siphoning Strike is his champion spell. So this is, 3-cost strike. You can, with Echoing Spirit and with Searing Brilliance, potentially get this down to 1 cost. And you can continually strike with him, draw into more copies of it. You can do something like that with him as well. And so you can just look at the different champions, check and see, hey, is my champion spell part of my deck? If it is it worth hitting Searing Brilliance in there? Spirit Blossom Kindred, she's probably not a great option for it because she has 4 spells in her starting deck. So consistently hitting the spell that you want with this is a bit more difficult because she has 4 spells, but she also has her champion spell as part of her deck, so, option there. You can just look in at a lot of these. That can be a potential indicator that Searing Brilliance will be a good spell for that champion. I think Spirit Blossom Evelyn also, does she have? Yeah, this is her champion spell. She has quite a few spells. Again, she has like 4 spells in her deck, so again, wouldn't be very consistent just because of the number of spells in her starting deck, but it is an option if you are able to cut spells from your deck, or if you don't mind hitting the spell with other things, that can just be worthwhile, where you're like, okay, maybe I won't hit my champion spell, but it'll let me draw more stuff if your deck is heavily reliant on draw and getting specific cards. Sometimes just having that, hey, this is essentially becomes a 0-cost spell that draws another card, can be very worthwhile. That, for instance, would be someone like Nautilus. So Nautilus is really reliant on draw. If you look at his stuff here, until you're deep, when you draw, you toss one. So this is really important for him. Getting cards that draw cards synergize with this. So drawing more cards will make you toss more cards. You get to deep a lot quicker. So even if you don't have any important spells in your deck, I oftentimes will use Searing Brilliance on him. You can substitute out something here, and this will help you hit deep a lot quicker, a lot more consistently. On my free-to-play account, I don't have Searing Brilliance on my free-to-play account, so I haven't used it on there. But with him, I hate this spell Heavy Metal, but if I hit this with Searing Brilliance, this all of a sudden becomes a 1-cost draw 1 and toss 1, which is a lot better for me. And then, Lure of the Depths, this already draws, but now it'll draw 2, so I'll be tossing more cards. And same with, this Salvage. This is draw 2, toss 2. This becomes draw 3, and effectively, toss like 5 or something like that. It becomes crazy. Lots of tossing from this, and it's really strong for you, so gets you to deep really quickly. So things like that are also things you can look out for, even if there's no infinite combo or anything like that. Sometimes just draw on its own is strong enough to say, hey, this relic is going to be good enough for this champion. I won't go into every single champion that has their champion spell as part of their deck, or has a specific spell, but pretty much any champion where you're also spell based, like Swain, it's going to be very good on him. His starting deck doesn't have his champion spell or anything, but he has damaging spells in his starting deck, and so getting more copies of those damaging spells, being able to leverage his damage. Same with like Vex, she's also a spell damage champion. If we go in here, like Vex, really strong on her to be able to cast more spells. In her case, we're often drafting spells, and so that have extra damage, so getting more copies of those spells that we draft in our deck, really strong for us. That's another way to go about it. So yeah, just think about that. We talked about the relic combination of this with Echoing Spirit, but it can also combine with like Found Fortune. That's why I'm using it here on Ari. This will make it so like this. Normally Found Fortune would only draw a card that costs 1 from your deck. So you have 3 cards that cost 1 from your deck. But if you cut like these guys from your deck, or try to get rid of them, try to keep them in your opening hand, things like that, then you're more likely to draw into your charm, and if you have more copies of it, you'll draw into that. But this also makes it so rather than only having charm, if I happen to hit this Sprite Dance with it, this will become a 1-cost. This means that it can be picked up by Found Fortune. So it makes it so rather than just having 1 out of 3 options that I can pick up with Found Fortune, it makes it so I have 2 out of 4. So a 50% chance that I am going to hit, and then even this will make it so there's 4 more copies of it. So it's even less. We actually have potentially 8 cards here that are within that set. Instead, it'll make it so we have, extra 4, so we'll have 12. So it'll be 8 out of 12. So we have like a 75% chance with Found Fortune to hit one of the cards that we want every time we drop Ari. So yeah, really strong from that sense. that you're able to better guarantee that you're going to get the cards that you want from Found Fortune. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind when you're drafting and doing things like this. There are other relics that it can interact with. There is another relic here, Deck of Destiny. This it can also interact with. This potentially, actually, I probably should make a change to my Swain deck, for instance. It's, extremely strong on Swain. So if I wanted to, instead of like this Shock and Awe, I could substitute this out for the Deck of Destiny. And then if this hits the wild card here, I get a copy of it for every 7 cards in my deck. That can also get hit by Searing Brilliance. This becomes effectively a 1 cost. I can, draw 2 cards and refill spell mana, or deal a bunch of damage to their entire board, or stun. So yeah, it becomes, and it's actually a 1 cost wild card. So rather than 2 cost, it's 1 cost, and then Searing Brilliance hits it, it becomes 0 cost. So really strong combination to use here as well. And you could use this with other champions. You could use this with TF. You can use it with pretty much any spell-based champion where you're able to do, you have a bunch of scaling spell damage or something like that. Other ways to scale spell damage with your deck, like from your constellation or something like that, then that'll also be beneficial. Pretty much the only spell-based champion that I would not recommend something like Searing Brilliance on is Jace, obviously because Jace requires you to cast specifically 6+ cost spells, and you don't want your 6+ cost spells to get their cost reduced by 1, because then they're 5 cost, and they're no longer, meeting his requirement for his level up, as well as for once he's, his constellation stuff also benefits from 6+ cost. So you really don't want to use it in a deck like this, even though he's a more spell-based deck. It's a rare exception where you're like, okay, I don't want to put this in here. But yeah, other spell-based champions highly recommend using it on. Even though like Lux, you sort of want to spend mana with her, I would say you can still use it on her. Still very good with her, especially because one of her starting spells, this one, if you get multiple copies of this in your deck, really good to get those mana gems early on, get scaling. Definitely a great way to go. Highly recommend using it on her if you have it, and you potentially, if you don't have like her signature relic or something like that, you basically have like a 50-50 chance of hitting Succession. So she has Succession and Remembrance are her starting spells. You basically have a 50-50 chance of hitting one of these, and if you hit Succession, then you're quite happy. So because this gets you up to your 6 mana gems pretty quickly, and then you can be casting stuff, refilling your mana, and going off with that. So yeah, lots of champions that this relic is good on, but think of combinations with reduced cost, hitting Found Fortune. We talked about the Echoing Spirit and Deck of Destiny. Those are all really good combinations with Searing Brilliance. Searing Brilliance does also make those cards created cards, so you can also keep that in mind even for these, if you have things that trigger off created cards. So some of the champions like Victor or Aurelian Soul do stuff with created cards, so you can potentially benefit off that. Using the created copies, Chosen by the Stars benefits from created stars, and that Augment is benefited from created things, so you can think about combinations with that. There's a lot of different pieces that can go into this, and you can leverage it. So I think that's most of just what I wanted to generally talk about, how those combinations work, how you can look at that different champions see where can I potentially use this relic, how you can evaluate each individual champion, see, okay, is there some sort of build that I can do here that I didn't think of before? Are there some potentially good things on here? I'm even using Searing Brilliance on champions you might not think, like Ambessa, because her champion spell is really good. It rallies her and making it cheaper. It goes down from 4 cost to 3 cost. I mean, her champion spell is normally 6 cost, but she has a thing on it in her deck that makes it go down to 4 cost, and then you get Searing Brilliance on it, makes it 3 cost. Makes it a lot easier to rally. Having more copies of this in your deck is really good. So yeah, there's a lot of champions that I use this on that you might not initially think, like, hey, this is a spell champion, I really want this on this champion. There's some champions where you're just like, hey, I want more copy of this spell that's in my starting deck, and this is going to be really strong if I have it in there. So take a look at a lot of different champions. If you have Searing Brilliance, I think it's it is my favorite relic, but I think it's extremely powerful, potentially overlooked by people. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions about this relic or other relics you would like to see a sort of deeper individual dive on the relic itself and what sort of combinations it can work with in terms of the other relics that are available, or champion spells, decks, other things like that. And I'll try to do a deeper dive on some other relics. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think, and we'll catch you next time.